In this video, I'll be showing you how I lowered my LDL cholesterol levels by almost 25% in less than 6 months by incorporating one particular type of food in my diet. Hi, I'm Chung, a qualified nutritionist with a master's in nutritional sciences, here to share with you the latest evidence-based findings on healthy eating and living. Back in July of 2022, I went for a regular checkup and got my blood work done. And for the first time in my life, my LDL cholesterol was at 115 milligrams per deciliter. Granted that the number was not super high and my doctor was not concerned at all, but from my research, I knew that any LDL cholesterol above 60 to 70 milligrams per deciliter would start to cause my arteries to slowly clog over time. And the higher the number, the worse would be the situation. In fact, a 2017 study of more than 4,000 participants found that when LDL cholesterol levels increased 2.5 times from 60 to 150 milligrams per deciliter, the chances of having clogged arteries increased almost 6 times. The effect is also worsened by the duration of exposure to high LDL cholesterol levels. For example, if you were able to reduce your LDL cholesterol by 60 milligrams per deciliter, over a 5-year period, your risk of developing coronary heart disease would be lower by about 30%. And if you could sustain that lower LDL cholesterol level for 50 years, your risk of developing coronary heart disease would be lower by close to 70%. So, what's the takeaway here? It is important to pay attention to your LDL cholesterol levels and keep them low as early as possible. With this link between LDL cholesterol and cardiovascular disease established, I'm going to zoom in on the one type of food that I implemented to help me lower my LDL cholesterol. But before that, if you are enjoying this video, do hit the subscribe and the like buttons. That would really help other people find this video. You could also check out this other video where I talk about other foods that are also effective in lowering LDL cholesterol. Before I dive into the natural ways of lowering LDL cholesterol, do note that if you have high LDL levels, do consult a medical doctor to discuss some medical options as you implement these dietary changes at the same time. So, what was the type of food that I implemented to lower my LDL cholesterol? These were foods that were high in soluble and viscous fiber. There are many different types of dietary fiber, but overall, they can be classified into whether they are soluble in water, whether they form a viscous gel when dissolved, and whether they can be fermented or metabolized by our good friends, the gut microbiota. All of these different properties of fiber are important for different aspects of our health. But for lowering LDL cholesterol, what seems to be important is the ability of the fiber to be soluble and be able to form a viscous gel in our intestines. Just a reminder of what viscosity means. Something that is more viscous will be thicker and flows slower, just like honey is more viscous than water. One of the functions of cholesterol in the body is its conversion into bile acids by the liver. The bile acids are then concentrated in the gallbladder and secreted into the small intestines when we eat. The primary function of bile acids is to help us digest the fats in our meals. The majority of these bile acids are actually then reabsorbed at the far end of our small intestines and sent back to the liver to be reused many times within a single meal. Soluble fiber that increases the viscosity of the mixture in our small intestines have been shown to bind and trap these bile acids. So instead of being reabsorbed and reused, the bile acids are being swept into the large intestines and then excreted in our stool. If the bile acids are not being reabsorbed, that means that the liver needs to pull more cholesterol from our system to produce more bile acids and thereby reduce the amount of LDL cholesterol that is circulating in our system. So, what foods contain soluble and viscous fiber that have been shown to reduce LDL cholesterol? There are 3 foods that have been investigated by multiple studies demonstrating their well-proven ability to reduce LDL cholesterol. And I have implemented 2 of them into my dietary routine. Number 1 is oats. Oats contain a high amount of a type of soluble and viscous fiber called beta-glucan. 100 grams of rolled oats contain a whopping 10.4 grams of total fiber, out of which about 4 grams is beta-glucan. This meta-analysis of 28 studies showed that eating at least 3 grams per day of beta-glucan, which is about 80 grams of rolled oats, reduced LDL cholesterol levels by 10 milligrams per deciliter over an average period of about 3 months. So, what I did for myself was to eat 1/3 cup or about 35 grams of rolled oats every morning, starting from around October of 2022, which was about 3 months after I got my blood work done. I am a big proponent of starting the day with a bowl of overnight oats, and that is one simple and convenient way to include oats into your diet. Number 2 is barley. Barley also contains a high amount of beta-glucan, the same type of soluble and viscous fiber found in oats. A 2016 meta-analysis of 14 studies showed that 6.5 grams of beta-glucan, which is found in about 100 grams of pearl barley, also reduced LDL cholesterol by about 10 milligrams per deciliter over an average period of 4 weeks. Right after I got my blood work done in July 2022, I started to incorporate about 3 tablespoons or about 35 grams of barley into the grains that I eat for lunch and or dinner. What I find is that barley has a neutral taste and cooks well in a rice cooker. So if rice is a staple in your household, you could start by swapping out some rice for barley when you make lunch or dinner. Just note that barley will require more water and will probably cook better when you combine it with brown rice instead of white rice. Number 3 is psyllium husk. Psyllium husks are the outer shells of psyllium seeds and are almost entirely composed of fiber. If you had 100 grams of psyllium husk, 70 grams of that would be dietary fiber and 80 to 90% of that would be psyllium fiber, which is also able to form a viscous mixture in the small intestines like beta-glucan. In this 2018 meta-analysis, the researchers looked at results from 28 studies and concluded that about 2 tablespoons of psyllium per day could reduce LDL cholesterol by about 13 milligrams per deciliter over an average period of 2 months. Since I was already incorporating barley and oats, I did not add more psyllium into my diet. Also, barley and oats are more whole foods, while psyllium, on the other hand, is more of a natural food supplement. I personally would recommend going with the barley and oats if you can, since they contain a lot of other nutrients. But if you find that incorporating barley and oats is more difficult, it might be easier to sprinkle 1 tablespoon of psyllium over your cooked grains as an easy way to increase this particular type of fiber in your diet. Just a couple of things to note before I share with you my LDL cholesterol number after less than 6 months of incorporating barley and oats into my diet. First of all, if you are not used to eating a lot of fiber, you need to slowly increase the intake of these high fiber foods. For example, start with oats for a couple of weeks before you then add in the barley. Secondly, food processing seems to dampen the effectiveness of these fibers in reducing LDL cholesterol, so I recommend sticking with the less processed versions of these foods, such as rolled oats instead of instant oats. So, what was my LDL cholesterol number in January of 2023? It was brought down from 115 to 88 milligrams per deciliter, a decrease of 27 milligrams per deciliter, or close to 25%. I was quite happy to see that the dietary changes I implemented actually had a measurable effect on an important health biomarker. I've continued to stick with these dietary habits since then and would definitely continue to report on any other improvements as they come about. Lower would definitely be better, but 88 milligrams per deciliter for now is something I can live with. If you enjoyed this video, then you would probably enjoy these other videos where I talk about other specific foods that can also lower LDL cholesterol, as well as other health benefits of eating high fiber foods. If you learned something from this video, do hit the like button and click on subscribe here. Feel free to ask questions in the comments and share in the comments if you have used barley in any of your recipes. See you next time.